Yeah, well, one thing I love about the Traugot is that it's a really versatile instrument. So you can kind of like, I've experimented with putting foam behind the bridge, and you get a
Oh,
really
really?
nice kind of parlor guitar kind of
Oh,
sound
really?
with a muted sound. Um, I did that when we recorded Gwen Stefani's Christmas record. There's all these like little acoustic parts, and I experimented with the foam, and it turned out it sounded just like an old Martin
You put
parlor
foam
guitar.
like right next to the saddle, essentially.
Right by the saddle, yeah.
Cool.
So a little piece of foam under there. That's fun. Ideally, I'd love to have three sizes, just like with jazz boxes, like a really big grand auditorium Gibson J200, and then a Martin parlor guitar, and then the Traugot, which is such a versatile instrument. But yeah, like we mentioned, microphones have a lot to do with it. Live, I really like the Shure SM81 or the AKG 451B.
Right.
And in recording studio, I mean, I have tried a lot of stuff. I just love the Neumann KM84 and all of the cheaper variants now, like the Warm Audio 84 is a great mic. The SC7, I believe it is a great one too. So pencil mics for me are really the go-to. I know a lot of engineers who like large diaphragm mics on acoustic guitars, but I've never gotten the focused sound with a large diaphragm compared to like a pair of really great Sheps or Neumann mics on a steel string guitar. But live, we don't really have the luxury of stereo miking our guitar, and we don't want to necessarily do that. So having again, the Shure products, the SM81 is an awesome live acoustic guitar mic.
Right.
And as we all know, blending the DI with a radial tone bone or pendulum SP1, something like that, with a microphone, and having a good engineer in the front of the house will get you as good of acoustic guitar as you could get in pretty much any room. But it takes a really good engineer out in front to know how to mix it right.
Yeah, definitely shout out to the people at Radial, because we've used the Tone Bone PZ Pre for a while, and that's what I'm using right now on the podcast. That's what we've used in our live shows a lot. It gets a wonderful DI sound from the acoustic guitar. Will, when you came into New West, like, we were immediately asking you to switch between acoustic guitar and go back to your box and trying to get a good sound live. How have you sort of developed from that process on how you get a tone live on the acoustic?
Before I answer that, you had a good point talking about different guitar sounds, like Bob Dylan versus someone like Andy McKee. Andy on the very crisp, articulate side, Bob Dylan on the warm, kind of maybe even using your thumb to kind of get that sound. But I think a big part of that is the strings, the string age, the string gauge,
totally.
Right? I actually, these strings have been on here a while, and it sounds fairly crisp, I would say.
Yeah.
Even with my fingers. And granted, I keep my guitar in the case when I don't use it, and I haven't necessarily played this Marchione steel string a ton recently, but I think that the string, like if you pick up a Martin at a recording studio, it's got these old crusty strings. It just has that thud. Versus our guitars, we're kind of more on top of our instruments all the time. It kind of just has more ring to it. And I also think that, like, I use Martin retro 11 gauge strings, which is, I think, all things considered, on the slightly thinner side.
Yeah.
But it just sounds good to me.
The playability is a little easier, right?
Yeah.
It's a little brighter, and especially, I think, moving back to the question you asked, I think sometimes in a mix it actually helps the sound of the acoustic cut through if there's not all that heavy, brassy mud on the guitar. I don't know, you guys might disagree, but
No,
I like the
agree
way
with that. I mean, the only thing is, like, if those strings get a little too slinky, like they're a little too light when you're trying to because sometimes with the acoustic you want to dig in to these rhythm parts. Like, that's, I think, a big part of how we play in New West. Like, I take a part like Pacific Blues, I'm doing, and I'm only digging in like 50% right now, It might be blowing us out the water if I do it any other way. But